We'll ask you questions. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we are back from lunch, and I'm going to share my screen real quick to introduce our next guest. We have Seneca Harrison here from Quality Clinical Research. Seneca has been the CEO, Vice President of QCR since 2004. He has conducted over 300 clinical trials within internal medicine, family medicine, and urology. QCR is associated with some of the best physicians in Omaha and is committed to providing the highest quality healthcare to every patient. Some of the current studies include COVID-19 treatment, Crohn's disease, gout, fibromyalgia, and meningitis vaccine. I also recently found out that he has over 130 pairs of sneakers. I would like to take a look at some of those myself, but I will let Seneca take the floor, and I will pull this up for you. Slideshow. I want to make sure we're sharing it. Okay. It is yours.
So yeah, we're based in Omaha. We are an independent company here. We contract with most of your pharmaceutical research companies to help develop either new devices, new medication, or new vaccines. And we're in the COVID world here, so we've been really focused on COVID really since last March, helping develop the Pfizer vaccine. We enrolled roughly 250 something patients into the Pfizer vaccine out of that 44,000 that was global. We are still tracking those patients for the long-term data. That's how all your information that the news is presenting, all your Facebook feeds are presenting to you. Companies like mine are collecting that data, submitting it to the FDA and the CDA, and they are pushing that out to the public so that can be published. Like you said before, we have worked over 300 trials in pretty much almost every indication. That's our bread and butter. COVID vaccine and development of the treatment and vaccine wasn't nothing new, the process for us. It wasn't something that we had to gear up because this is what we do. It's in our wheelhouse. That's why they selected us. We helped develop a lot of vaccines over the years and a lot of treatments for different indications. So, but where are we at? We all know the mask mandate started back in March. The hospitals, we were trying to prevent the hospitals from getting overwhelmed. We worked closely with Methodist Hospital. We were doing a lot of inpatient trials at Methodist Hospital. We were running, I think we were running 2 there, just finishing up the last one. We also opened up another clinic. The scare was bringing in healthy patients that are not COVID positive with the COVID positive and help spread it. So we had to open up a new clinic so that we can see these positive patients. And we were working with what we were calling the Trump cocktail, which was remdesivir and a couple of other medications. We were studying that. We had a couple other companies, Sorrento, Eli Lilly. They were all studying different combinations and different antibody molecules to help prevent or to help treat positive patients. So we were working on it on both fronts, the vaccines and the treatments and the recovery of patients who contracted. As of May, we have 100,000 deaths, and I believe that's in Nebraska. I think we're a little less than that, so that's not 100% true. We went into unemployment surge a little bit because right now, at the beginning, COVID really affected the job market. With all the layoffs of the restaurants and the bars and different industries that were really working with the public. And now that we're seeing, the vaccines being rolled out, treatment there, that surge is not necessarily coming back that we are seeing. And we're trying to, not as a company, but like for us, we're struggling hiring people. We have had an ad out in Indeed and Monster for probably the last 3 or 4 months since the beginning of the year, and we're really struggling hiring. It'd be interesting to hear other business owners perspective on that. If they're having trouble, we see the unemployment rate and we're like, hey, there's people available. But our ads are saying, no, there's not. Usually when we put out an ad for any medical position, which is RNs, medical assistants, CNAs, we usually have a response within a month we're hiring someone. And that's vetting probably 50 to 60 candidates as we look through. And we're now 100, 200 candidates that we're looking. And the biggest problem is we set up interviews and they don't show. It's almost making me feel bad, like no one wants to work for me. Yeah. But, you know, we're that's one of our, you know, I won't say complaints, but one of the things that we're looking at, it'll be interesting as, you know, Alliance hopefully can send out a questionnaire and say, hey, are you guys having trouble hiring people? What does their hiring process look like right now? But yes, the first vaccine was approved back in December. It was Pfizer. You know, one of the things that we like to say is in the research community, it takes anywhere from 5 to 6 years to develop a vaccine. And we did it less than a year, right at a year. And the research community is celebrating, you know, our win here. This was a feat that was never done. No one has ever worked on a project like this, and for the whole globe to come together and enroll 44,000 patients across the globe to develop a vaccine was unheard of. The key is we did not miss one step. We followed every rule. There was no fast tracking this. The only thing is the FDA was looking at the data real time. So as we were entering our data, the FDA is looking at it. And that's what speeds up the process. A lot of people are confused to say, oh, you know what, they did it too fast. They didn't follow the rules. Well, when you don't have money and you don't have regulations bogging down the process, a lot of stuff can happen real fast. And that's this case. We are in a pandemic. And so if you eliminate those things and the FDA sets aside a whole task force just to look at the data, you can get drugs approved in less than a year. Will that go? Would that stay to change or stay the same? I think we're going to start seeing drugs approved a lot faster. It won't take that 5 to 6 years. It might be around the 2 to 3, just because, hey, if we can do it for COVID, how come we can't do it for the rest of the medicine? And why I bring that up is as new medicine gets developed, the existing medicine, the cost goes down. It's just like competition in anything. As the new player comes on, you know, the old players kind of sit on the bench or they weed out. Well, they get cheaper in cost. And so as we continue developing, you know, new cancer medicine, asthma, diabetes, those existing medicines, the cost will get done, which will help the average American. So we want to continue doing vaccines. We want to continue developing new medicine because that helps healthcare. Yeah. Change the slide.
Yes, sir.
Like I said before, we put 256 patients in there. They were vaccinated way back in August and July of 2020. So when it got approved, some of these patients were coming on their 6th month. So we knew what data was happening. That 6 months data of how this vaccine was going to affect the average American was known come December 11 when it got approved by the FDA for emergency use. So it wasn't like, hey, we thought of this concept and the FDA approved it 2 days later. We've been working on it since really the phase 1 trial started back in April of 2020. And we got on the phase 2 trial and then finished up phase 3. Conspiracy theories, you know, we beat these down every day. From, you know, the Bill Gates Foundation putting microchips in people to this is turning you into a zombie. You know, we hear it all the time. And I can tell you, you know, that's not there. There's no microchips unless it's some technology that we're nowhere near aware of. And, you know, the liquid, we've worked with this. We've worked with the vaccine since last April. And to me, it's one of the biggest products that we have ever worked on. I'm excited, my staff excited. I mean, the whole research world is excited about this Pfizer study. We also have Moderna that came on board too, and they got approved. I believe it was the first part of 2021 for emergency use too. Same molecules packaged just a little bit different. I actually worked on Pfizer, like we've been talking about since last April, but I have the Moderna vaccine. Because since we were working with Pfizer, our employees were not allowed to get the Pfizer vaccine versus the bias or, different data. So it was interesting to say, hey, I worked on this, and then come back and be like, yeah, we're going to work on the competitor. I'm actually going to get the competitor shot. Side effects are normal for both of them. You're going to experience some form of body aches, chills, some form of, a headache. You might even feel extreme fatigue. Those are your most 48 hours after injection, most common side effects. I always tell people, if you have anything after 48 hours, reach out to your physician or reach out to the vaccination clinic just to get more information about your side effects. The biggest thing, we must get vaccinated. That's the only way we're going to get over COVID. There will be a form of herd immunity, and with the vaccine group, I think I've seen a snippet the other day that half of the population in the U.S. have at least received one of the vaccines. So we're getting close to achieving that herd immunity with the vaccine and everything. Still on the bottom, we're working with our latest is Moderna seen our data with our Pfizer, and they have now contracted us to work with kids. So we're going to start working, vaccinating kids ages 12 to 6 months of age. As a father, I was kind of hesitant. And I'm like, hey, I don't know if that's the group. We did a survey of our database. 100% responsive, yes. Word is starting to get out that we got approved. And I can tell you now, our emails and our phone rings off the hook of how many parents want to get their kids vaccinated and want to participate in this trial. So the buzz is out there. I was a little bit shocked. I'm extremely excited that there's so many people willing to participate in this trial. It is a first come, first serve kind of bid. So, you got to get in and give us a call, but we have a team of pediatricians on board. This study goes a little bit slower because we are working with children. But the idea, what I've heard from some of the teachers is, I'm a little scared to go into the classroom where, I may be vaccinated or maybe in between vaccines, and I have 31 children looking at me and they're known carriers of COVID. I'm guaranteed I'm going to get it. And so this is just the natural progression of how this vaccine is going. We have to vaccinate the children to make sure that COVID will completely go away. If it ever 100% go away, I'm not here to say that, but at least so we can get back without wearing masks and we can go back to, I'm a college football guy. I want to see my football teams play, and so I don't want to be in the mask in the stadium, screaming it out. We did see an increase in staff, just as we contracted with a bunch of nurses and physicians as we had to open up that COVID clinic. And, I really take my hat off to them because they really jumped in. And some of these ladies and gentlemen were working at Methodist in their COVID clinic, and they were coming back off on their day off and working in another COVID clinic to help develop treatment. So the medical team, the medical group, the medical field really stood up and answered the call of COVID. I always say, if you see anyone, a doctor, nurse, even the CNAs, even the people that work in the hospital to clean, they were all susceptible to being exposed, and they showed up every day, and they worked hard. And so, I take my hat off to the medical community in the city, my staff, the people who came on temporary and the people who came on full. We really did an awesome job and answered the call. Impact on a national, it's crazy how, our success here in Omaha has shined a light on us. And, you know, it's also helping drum up a lot of business with this Moderna kids vaccine. We're the only one in upper Midwest. So we have people calling from Minneapolis, Kansas City, Denver, South Dakota saying, hey, how can I drive my kid down here to be part of your study? So that makes us really feel good. It's an honor to be at the forefront of COVID and say, hey, this is what we did. You know, we talk about legacies, and this might be ours as we continue and COVID subside. This might be our, you know, QCR's legacy. Hey, we help develop COVID treatments and vaccines. So on the national stage, it's just an honor. I've been doing interviews on TV, radio, social media. It's been a whirlwind of a year and a half, and you know, I'm honored to be a part of it and be especially guide the doctors and the nursing staff that we have and help develop this vaccine. I don't know what's on the last slide here.
Oh, there you go.
This is pretty much what I went over. The main slide is the next one that I really like to show. So these are all the approved vaccines, and not all of these are approved in the US, just only 3. And so we talked about Moderna and Pfizer, and I did not get the chance to work on Johnson & Johnson, but that was your one single dose. And we look at the media and what they're projecting, or not projecting, but what they're publicizing about Johnson & Johnson. So you have 7 million people who've been vaccinated. You have 7 cases of an adverse event where they are developing blood clots. The EU or European medical it's the same as the FDA. They went ahead and reapproved Johnson & Johnson. And their saying was, for the greater good of our population, those 7 adverse events out of 7 million, it's kind of one of those things where that's expected. You're going to have some adverse events. You know, in layman's term, it kind of sucks for those 7 people, but for the 7 million, it's working. It's doing what it's supposed to do. It's actually helping. You know, it's helping us achieve herd immunity. Could they study it a little bit more? Probably. Could all these vaccines be studied a little bit more? But in the time frame that we're in, we could. More and more people were dying daily than the 7 people that have been affected by the COVID. So as the media blasts Johnson & Johnson, we really want to look at the numbers and seeing how many people are actually being saved by Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and truly how many people are being affected if the 3 vaccines are not equally distributed, because now you're putting the strain on Pfizer's factories and Moderna's factory as they're ramping up to try to cover Johnson & Johnson as their shot is sitting in refrigerators. So it's one of the things to think about. These other ones are really specific to their countries. I don't know too much about them. Eventually, they will probably try to get FDA approved. But some of these other countries are just easier to get their vaccine approved. One of the things that you want to see is their efficacy. You know, Johnson & Johnson was 65%, but 100% from passing on the vaccine and hospitalization. Pfizer is still leading with a 95% effectiveness. You see some of these other ones at 79 and 91, and Moderna is 94.1. So the RNA molecule is what you're looking at for Pfizer and Moderna. That is cutting edge science. It's been around for a while, but it is cutting edge science. And I think that's where a lot of people are getting afraid of saying, oh, the conspiracy theories, it's going to track me. They're putting a microchip in me. Why is it cutting edge? It is teaching the body how to defend itself. That's why it's cutting edge. It's on a level where medicine is going to continue to progress this way. You know, we're moving out of like the flu vaccine where we grow the vaccine on an egg. We're now messing with more synthetic or human-made vaccines to be more efficient, 94, 95% efficient. So, yeah, I mean, if there's questions, I can answer those. You know,
I have some too. I know we had some
Absolutely.
comments.
Yeah, there were a few
But
comments that
Yeah.
popped up, and please share your comments and questions in the Q&A and in the chat as we're going through this.
So I have a question, because actually in my presentation, after I had done a bunch of research on the vaccine and like employment law and stuff, and they were talking about that like the emergency FDA approval of the vaccine is not the same thing as vaccines for other. And then I know you were talking about it is the same process. So do you know anything about the FDA approval process? Is that true that it's not at the same level?
so emergency use is strictly as that, is emergency use. There was
Okay.
no other option but to use these that have been developed. In turn, as the data continues to come in, then it will be officially stamped approved for the fight COVID-19. It will
Okay,
still lie under emergency use until that stamp comes, which as in half the population is just a formality right
it's just a formality.
now.
So as far as the testing and everything's been the same as everything else, but
We
just-
followed the exact process. If we were developing a diabetic drug or if we're developing a new vaccine for flu, we will follow these steps. And like I said before, the biggest thing was the FDA was reviewing the data real time. So as we're continually uploading our information, they're reviewing it. And like I said, we're looking at 44,000. There was a team of FDA folks that are really 24-hour shifts looking at this stuff as it comes through. It is an amazing feat what Pfizer did. You know, I can only speak with Pfizer as we're just now working with Moderna, and the same thing with our government to get it approved. The FDA has some of the stricter rules than anywhere in the world. And so for it to get emergency use, there's a lot of countries that just will follow behind us and say, okay, if they're FDA approved, then we'll approve it.
Yeah.
So what we do kind of dictate the rest of the world. Some of those other ones that you see, those countries kind of develop their own and kind of just went with what they had, and they probably will go back and use Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca in the future.
Okay.
You mentioned 44,000 a few times. Is that the appropriate sample size, or that what is that number?
So 44,000 was the sample size that the FDA recommended Pfizer to get emergency use,
Got it. Okay.
which was the largest clinical trial for a vaccine. I won't say ever because I don't 100% know ever, but it's been a long time since they've had a trial that big on a global standard.
Awesome. You were talking about that we need the vaccine to get herd immunity. Will that have to be done every year? Because don't they have to everybody has to re-get the vaccine, or do you know anything?
So right now, from my knowledge, and I'm not speaking as a physician because I'm not a physician, I'm just clinical research. And so what they're saying is there may be a possibility for a booster in 2022.
Okay.
And so if that's the case, you still have people on different time points of when they received the vaccine. I received mine in last February. Someone's just now receiving theirs. So as long as we are all getting vaccinated at some point, herd immunity will happen unless there's another variant that comes in that's a little more deadlier. The beauty of the RNA molecule, which is Moderna and Pfizer, is it was based off the SARS virus.
Mm-hmm.
So in theory, it has not come out that it should be able to take care of any mutations,
Okay.
but we're still
finding
finding that information out. You know, they talked about the South Africa and South American variant. There's also a New York, there's a California. I mean, there's all these different variants, and it's still seen that these two vaccines are still protecting us against them. So being based off the SARS, I think, I won't say it's 100%, but it looks like that may be the case.
Yeah.
So we could possibly achieve herd immunity completely if we still are covered and it doesn't mutate to something that is, worse than what it presented itself back in, March of 2020.
Okay, but do they anticipate that kind of like the flu vaccine that you might have to get that every year?
Right now, that's kind of the way they're looking. It's just going to be your annual, booster. I have seen clinical trials, the protocols where they're looking at combining the flu vaccine and the COVID vaccine together so that you'll get one injection. We've looked at a couple protocols and signed up for saying that we would like to participate in those trials. There's just a lot of things that are unknown right now. So I would say, would you get a booster? Yeah, we'll probably get another booster. How often that would be, that's still to be told.
Okay.
If that's annually or if it's just another booster and we're done.
Yeah. Can you give us a little bit of a look under the hood?
Mhm.
I mean, last year, kind of chugging along, early January, part of the year, January, February, working on flu shots, meningitis, gout, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, you got to flip the switch and
Yeah.
everyone on your team is now working on COVID-19 vaccination.
That's,
I mean, how do you,
that's,
and then keeping people safe as well? I mean,
it's, there's other sites, other colleagues of mine who have closed up shop because they didn't make the audible to COVID-19. They either didn't believe or didn't have the capabilities to change as quickly as we were able to. And I think that was some of the attraction to some of these companies were, hey, we're ready. We have a new facility that we opened up that can treat these patients. And in our existing facility, we were able to adapt to strictly see mass enrolling patients. So a typical day for us is we see anywhere from 6 to 8 patients a day. That's a busy day for us. Our patients usually come in and they're in our office for an hour, maybe 2 hours at a time. When we were vaccinating our patients, we were seeing 20 to 30 patients a day. So we're on a whole different scope that we don't traditionally do, but we ramped up staff. We expanding our buildings and opened up a whole new building to accommodate this. So to your question, it was a feat to change on that quickly. The whole month of April, we were down. We were closed shop. May, we opened back up. And after that, it's been nothing but COVID, and hiring people. And so Methodist was great. We had a lot of nursing staff from Methodist that were really engaged and wanted to be a part of it. And we also have a couple of physicians. And then our team of physicians, they were, hey, we're all on board. Doesn't matter how many hours we work. And we pretty much ran 7 days a week from May to probably the first of the year.
Wow.
It was a big feat, yeah.
and then what about the safety protocols for just not contaminating some of the research that you're doing?
Yeah. So, before we got vaccinated, and this is just a kind of a testimony of how safe we were and that these things work. We tested everyone in our office for antibodies before we vaccinated everyone in our office. I knew I had COVID back in July, and 3 other girls tested positive for antibodies. We did not miss one day for COVID. And so for them to be actively seeing patients, hanging around each other, and probably was COVID positive at one time, and us not to be down one day, that tells you this worked, and we were very, very careful and safe. We wiped down daily, hourly. Every time a patient came through, it was complete detox of that room all the way back out to the lobby. We pretty much eliminated our lobby, so patients were scheduled exactly on a time point. They walked in, they got screened, and then they went exactly into a room. And then that's where everything was performed in that one room that they were assigned to. Like I said, we were seeing probably 8 to 10 at a time. So we had all 10 rooms filled up. We were seeing these patients and they all exited. They were staggered 15 minutes apart. So they all exit at 15 minutes, same as they came in. So it was a feat, I will say. A lot of cleaning supplies. It was a lot of, cleaning crews coming in after us. A lot of PPE. We're covered from face masks to full covered gowns as we see patients, gloves. we couldn't keep PPE in. It was kind of the golden ticket if you can find it. And we were searching high and low to get it. The good thing is a lot of the pharmaceutical companies were shipping it to us. And we didn't have to go through some of the major distributors because, you know, gloves went up to almost $5 a pair. You know, that's something, it was something ridiculous. And these full gowns were, you know, $10, and you can buy a box, you know, pre-COVID, you can get it for $10, you get 100 of these gowns. So the price gouging was ridiculous, and the pharmaceutical companies knew we needed to be protected, and provided a good portion. We did have to buy some for ourselves, but a lot of it was funded to us.
What about funding for the clinical trials? Where does that come from?
So we got a little bit from the CARES Act. A lot of it came from Pfizer. They were part of Operation Warp Speed, so that was federally funded, which trickled down to us. But that was pretty much it, and then self-funding as we get funds in and funds out. There's a lot of self-funding to that, but most of it is pharmaceutical funding.
So you mentioned that you guys work on testing medicines as well.
Yeah.
Are there any other ones under development? I know you said cancer earlier. Are there any other?
So
Cancer one's interesting too.
So you know, our practice, our day-to-day is developing new asthma, diabetes, cancer medication. I think we're up to about 15 clinical trials as we're starting to move away from COVID. We're starting to do more of our traditional work, and you know, we do everything from the common cold to sexual dysfunction and cancer. So like I said, there's about 15 different studies going on right now at our clinic, and they just vary. I can give you the list if you want.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so we're, you know, it's kind of like any industry. You kind of are the leader or the head of it, and as you continue, in this case of COVID, how do I know that we are reaching a point where COVID is starting to subside? We're starting to get back to traditional work. All the pharmaceutical companies are sitting back and saying, okay, we probably have a good gist on this. There's really 2 or 3 players, Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, that are vaccinating. We're still seeing treatment stuff because there really isn't an approved treatment for COVID. There's some emergency use stuff, but there really isn't an approved. And so that will still continue. But that would be more of a hospital setting because they're looking for patients who are in the ICU at that time. But for vaccines and prevention, we're starting to see that subside as we get back to normal life.
So how many other research facilities, clinical facilities are there across the country that we're doing the same exact thing, right? So Pfizer is coming to you with this group of 250, 300.
Yep.
They're going and doing that all across the country.
So to reach that 44,000, there was 250 sites global.
Okay.
And so if you started on a phase 1, you just kept going to phase 3 and you just kept recruiting. So, you know, we caught the tail end of phase 2 and all of phase 3. So our numbers were low compared to some sites, but high because we started so late. Another thing that we focused on were the minorities. Different minority groups, because we knew that side was lagging in Pfizer. Pfizer had a 10%, or the FDA, the FDA required a 10% minority group to meet their number of out of that 44,000. So we're looking at 1,400 is all they required for minorities, and it didn't matter if it was Hispanic, Black, Asian, whatever. It just labeled minority. We boasted about a 35% out of our 253. So they really were impressed by our numbers and our efforts of recruiting. That's why we continue to work with Pfizer and Moderna, seeing those same numbers. We have teamed up with the Omaha tribe in Macy, Nebraska. And so we were getting a couple of those guys to come down and participate in clinical trials, which is kind of unheard of for Native Americans to participate in clinical trials. It's just something they don't do. It's a lot of untrust there. And so to bridge that gap, a lot of the pharmaceutical companies say, if you have that relationship, let's use it, because that is data that we have not received. The object is to make sure that whatever we develop works for everyone.
Yeah.
We did a poll probably right before COVID, and your average research participant is a female between the age of 35 and 45, and she's Caucasian. That's your average. So we lack men and we lack minorities. So when we develop medicine, it doesn't show the whole spectrum of the population. It just shows a female that between these ages. And, so if we're developing a high blood pressure medicine and he's taking it and it was developed on you, how do we know it works for him? Or how does he know it works for me?
Yeah.
And for men and different ethnic groups, there are black box warnings of medicine that, hey, you cannot prescribe to this population. And so when Pfizer were developing this vaccine, that was one of their key, was to make sure we include everybody, men, women, and different minority groups. And same thing with Moderna as we continue working with those guys. They want to make sure that we look at as many minorities and as many male participants as possible.
How about recruiting those people to be part of this study?
So that right there is a feat in ourselves. You can't all of a sudden just start recruiting. You have to have relationships already built. And so that's what we actively do no matter what. We are supporting, different minority groups, festivals. We're getting into churches. We're getting into different doctors' office. We really say, let's go where the people are, and so that they know our logo, they know our brand, and they say, you know what, we don't know what they do, but we know if there's ever something I need, I can go to these guys and they at least can point us somewhere. And that's kind of the way we want to be. Hey, you may not 100% know what we're studying at that moment, but we want to be those people that you say, hey, we have patients that have come in our clinic, they don't qualify, but they have did a physical or a workup with us, and we have discovered cancer or lupus or something like that. And we can direct those patients to different specialists because we know a lot of specialists in the city. And so we're actually helping. Just because you don't participate, we're still going to take care of you. We're not going to kick you out of the door. And I think that's relationships over the years, is have people trust us. And when COVID came, they were like, hey, we're willing to participate.
What is this done for your business?
This is done wonders for our business. Like I mentioned earlier, it's put us on a national stage. We are kind of picking what studies we want to do now, which is continue, knock on wood. But a luxury we probably didn't really have before COVID. It just was a little small mom and pop shop in Omaha. And now they're coming to our door and saying, hey, we want to work with you. So it's really helped. It sucked. It took a pandemic to put us on the spotlight of what great work we do, our nursing and our physicians here in Omaha do. But we will take it, and, we'll keep developing great medicine and great vaccines. And so it's been an honor. And so we'll take the press, we'll take the success and kind of just run with it and keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, well, it's obviously led to, Moderna coming to you saying, hey, we want your help, right, with figuring this out for children.
Yep.
So what is that? You mentioned it probably might take a little bit longer because you're focused on, what age group are you focused on?
So 11 to 6 months is the age group that we're focused on. Whenever you're dealing with kids, it's always a slower process. So what I mean, we'll take our time. In the Pfizer group for the adults, we're allowed to mass enroll. So we'll bring in as many patients as we can because we're trying to reach, we're trying to get FDA emergency use approved. So we were seeing running patients 7 days a week. We're seeing 20 to 30 patients a day, which is a crazy clinic for us. In this case, we're being allotted 7 patients a week. And so it's a lot slower. That data is being collected a lot faster, and we're having clinical holds. So we'll enroll 7, they will review the data, and then they will say, yes, let's move on to the next 7. And so it's just a slower process. They want to make sure we get it right before we harm a large amount of kids, or say that there's this adverse event that may happen in kids, we can now notify everyone else. So it's just more of a precautionary thing when you're dealing with kids.
Yeah.
And that's typical. I mean, even if we were developing, say, a meningitis vaccine, it will probably take us 18 months to do recruiting for that particular study. And we would probably enroll 20 or 30 patients in that 18 months. So it's the same thing. Like I said, there's nothing that we're doing that's new that we don't do since 2003.
Yep.
It's the same process. It's just we're faster, a lot faster because there's no red tape. A lot of the clinical holds is the FDA has to now find people to review that data. That's going to take 6 months to a year. The study's on hold for 6 months to a year so they can review that data, and then they will come back to phase 2 and then repeat for phase 3. And then 5 years later, all right, we got an FDA stamp. That's research.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, here, there's no red tape.
Yeah.
The FDA has set all these people aside, and it's just go, 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 go. Review, and then you get that stamp and FDA emergency use. So,
Michael, you have any questions? No?
what's going on?
Just learning.
Oh, yeah.
Just learning. I know we all are. Awesome. Well, Seneca, we really appreciate your time today. Thanks for coming down and giving us an update and a new little peek behind.
Chat.
Yeah.
Someone did share
Curtain.
some comments earlier
Oh yeah,
as
what
well.
do you have?
So
Let's
tell them the
see.
other comments too.
Yeah, so Star had told us, you just appreciate all your hard work to bring treatment options forward to all of us, very meaningful. Michelle saying very much of the same thing, thanks for all of your hard work in protecting
Thank you, guys.
So, greatly appreciate all of the work all of your people have been doing. I mean, like you said, 7 days a week and
Yeah.
rolling.
We almost rolled about a year at least.
Yeah.
7 days a week.
I know.
There was a lot of crying.
A lot of
Need a
time.
vacation after
Yeah, I was
that.
gonna say, hopefully you get some sleep and maybe take a little vacation.
Yeah, we all, we are looking at a major vacation. in coming
I bet.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again.
No
Seneca.
problem.
We appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
All
Awesome.
right.